What's up, guys? We're in this C211 classroom again, and my room is still not fixed, but it's totally fine. I'm recording on my Chromebook, and I took my mask off. I'm far enough away from everybody, and also, I'm vaccinated, so there should be less of a danger. Now, today you guys are working on your poem still, your first draft, as we're calling it, and I want to read one, because I'm trying to read a poem or two each day to give you some input, some variety. And I want to give a tip or two in case you're stuck. When I was looking at your poems, and I've been looking through and commenting and so on, several of you guys did like what might be called elegies, which are poems for, in memory of someone who has died, or a sort of funeral poem. And so I thought I'd do one of those. A very famous poem. In the 90s, there was a movie called Four Weddings and a Funeral. You guys probably never heard of it, but it was a big thing. And in it, one of the characters read this poem. It was not for the movie, it was decades earlier, but one of the characters read this because it was already famous, and then it became even more famous. And this poem is from a guy named W.H. Auden, who wrote in the 20s, 30s, 40s, very new ideas in some ways, but old-fashioned form. His poems are like four-line stanzas, alternating rhyme. A lot of it appears simple at first, and then you see that it's not. But this poem, well, let's get to it. Sometimes it's called by its first couple words, like a lot of poems are just named after their first line. Other times it has the title Funeral Blues, and it goes like this. Stop all the clocks. Cut off the telephone. Prevent the dog from barking with a juicy bone. Silence the piano, and with muffled drum, bring out the coffin. Let the mourners come. Let aeroplanes circle, moaning overhead, scribbling in the sky the message, he is dead. Put crepe bows around the white necks of the public doves. Let traffic policemen wear black cotton gloves. He was my north, my south, my east and west, my working week and my Sunday rest, my noon, my midnight, my talk, my song. I thought that love would last forever. I was wrong. Stars are not wanted now. Put out everyone. Pack up the moon and dismantle the sun. Pour out the ocean and sweep away the wood, for nothing now can ever come to any good. That's the poem, and it's so big, over the top. I love it. It's sort of this idea that, like, I'm sad, therefore the whole universe is done. Just throw it out. We don't need the sun, the stars. The dogs can stop barking. All the music in the world can just hit pause. And that's a great thing that poems can do, is you can take an emotion, even if it's just a single moment in a single person's life, and say, well, it's everywhere, it affects everything. It's so magically powerful that the universe is affected. You don't have to do that. It's just one angle you might take in a poem, but it's often nice to start small and then end up with something big in the stars and the cosmos. If you try to go the other way and you start big, it's usually not going to work. Another reason I love that poem is because of the sounds. You have a ton of rhyme, obviously, at the end of each line. You got that A-B-A-B style, or A-A-B-B. And you've got lots of alliteration. Even when it's not perfect, like Edgar Allan Poe, exact beginning of each word, there's a lot of sounds that bounce off each other. Like traffic policemen wear black cotton gloves. That ka, ka, ga really brings it all together, and it feels like it's special. It feels like it's fancy. It feels like it's not just regular language. It's something that was arranged for a reason. Okay? Alliteration doesn't have to be like, 5 words in a row that start with S. It can be sounds that might be spelled in different ways. You might have a C and a K. You might have a G, which is not exactly the same sound, but it's very close. It's what you call the voiced version of it. S, K, have no vocal cord, but when you go G, it's the same sound with vocal cords mixed in. Now, that's the other thing. I was going to give a little tip, which is for a lot of people, I picked out a couple keywords in the poem and I said, why don't you give me some alliteration, some words that sound like it. Even just one can really help. If you have a keyword and then boom, right after it, you echo the sounds, then we know it's important. I've mentioned a book a few times called The Triggering Town by a guy named Richard Hugo, and it was a book I read in a class many years ago. I thought it did a great job. He mentioned a poem that he was writing where he used the word cascade, a cascade, and then like 2 or 3 words later he said a suicide. Not because that was the plan. He wasn't actually writing a poem about a suicide, but it's just the idea that when you have one word and then you do another word with some sounds in common, you do a cascade and you're like, okay, it's got the C, it's got the DE, it's got this certain rhythm to it, and then boom, you just throw in another word with those sounds without thinking about the meaning, then it takes you in a whole new direction. Poems are like dreams. We've talked about how poems are like dreams. You can open a door and be on the moon instead of the hallway. But that association from one thing to another doesn't have to be magic. It doesn't have to be like just pure genius creativity. It can be, hey, what word sounds like the word I just used? You can take a little connection that starts small, and if you use a word, maybe a few words later you use another one that sounds like it, it can take you in a whole new direction. So that's my tip. Take a word. You can use even a electronic helper. You can go to rhymezone.com or onelook.com, one of these sort of rhyming dictionary things. Type in a word, hit sounds like, and then it'll give you words that sound like it. Big help. That's it. I'm going to end this video, but we're working on our poems. I'm going to look at more, comment on them, get that stuff, and once you get those first 3 steps, we're calling it a first draft.